3, 2, 1, blast off. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the MSP Chat Podcast, your weekly visit with two talking heads talking with you about the services, strategies, and success tips you need to make it big in managed services. My name is Rich Freeman. I am the Chief Analyst at Channel Mastered, the organization responsible for this show. I am joined side by side by your other co-host, our Chief Strategist at Channel Mastered, Eric Simpson. Eric, how goes it?
It's going really, really well, Rich. And it's because this is our last episode of the year, and we are recording it just before the Christmas and New Year break, right? So I'm super excited to get...
strictly speaking, allow me to correct you here. This is actually our first episode of the new year.
Oh, you did correct me correctly. It is.
This is landing in people's podcatchers and on YouTube and so on January 3rd. But yes, we are in fact recording it before the holidays, and we are both very excited to have some time off, time with family and friends and so on coming up as we record this.
So instead of saying we are from the future, by the time our listeners hear us, we will be from the past.
That is completely correct. And awesome. I trust we had a wonderful holiday break, each of us folks. So I hope you did too, as you are listening to or watching this right now. And so it's actually good that we've talked a little bit about the timing of when we're recording this as we dive into our story of the week, because it revolves around some stuff that was announced second to last week, basically, of 2024, two different research surveys. And I'll start with one that came out from CrowdStrike. It contained a series of findings about generative AI and security. The big number, the headline number that CrowdStrike emphasized and that sort of grabbed my attention is that 80% of the cybersecurity professionals they surveyed said that they want generative AI functionality in the context of a platform or an integrated security platform. And when I say want, I mean, that's kind of underplaying it, Eric. Basically, they were given the choice, which do you prefer? Do you want an integrated security platform that includes generative AI or no generative AI whatsoever? And they said, I'll take the platform. I mean, given the choice between a platform and no generative AI, I don't need the generative AI that bad. So, I mean, this tells you just how much people are into platforms right now. And this just reinforces stuff we've been talking about over the course of the last year on the podcast here in terms of the entire managed services world kind of drifting in the direction of platforms from Kaseya with Kaseya 365. ConnectWise is talking huge about platform right now. There are cost advantages, there are integration advantages. If you're consolidating vendors, another theme that's come up on numerous episodes of this show, going with a platform instead of standalone products helps there too. So MSPs, just like cybersecurity professionals, are very much into platforms. Now, the other report that came out same week as that CrowdStrike study came from Canalys. They published their latest RMM PSA market figures. And the big kind of surprise announcement there was that Kaseya, which for a long time has trailed ConnectWise in terms of market share for RMM PSA, is now number one in that market. But the thing that kind of jumped out at me is that number 3 on the list is no longer N-able. It is now NinjaOne. And Ninja grew its numbers by 54.1% over the course of the year. Halo, the PSA platform, is now number 5 on the list. They recorded 102% growth there. So a huge year for both of those vendors, which are not platforms. Ninja pretty much makes RMM software. The PSA that Halo makes is right there in the official name, Halo PSA. So you would think that their enormous growth in the market is kind of contradictory to this larger theme we're seeing of MSPs wanting platform everything. And there are non-platform related reasons why Ninja and Halo are doing so well right now in terms of their investment in community and their relationships with MSPs and how much their partners like the software. I don't want to say that everything all the credit for their success goes to this. But I also will point out, just a few weeks after Kaseya introduced the first part of Kaseya 365, back at the very end of May, Halo and Ninja announced that they were creating a platform. They're still independent companies, but they announced an integration pact. When the CEO of Halo spoke about that with CRN, he made perfectly clear this is in response to Kaseya 365, and it is absolutely an effort on our part to create an alternative platform. So actually, if you look at the success that Ninja and Halo are having here, it is to some degree, in some measure, further confirmation that if you are someone making software, selling software, line of business software, security software, you name it, to MSPs, you got to be thinking platform.
It's really, really interesting to see, how things have shifted, Rich, just in the last 12, 18 months or so. What I'm tracking from, my perspective being, at one time MSP and now working on both sides of the channel, are who are the partners that are being integrated or partnering with the Halos and the Ninjas. I wonder if there's some correlation that strikes a chord with smaller organizations, smaller MSPs, and the message that could be the appeal is, hey, we're listening, we take your feedback, we develop quickly, we implement, continuous change. I mean, I'm hearing a lot of that from partners out there, is they like that closer connection with the Halo and the Ninja organizations. And I wonder if what we're left with on the ConnectWise and Kaseya partner channels as they grow and continue to acquire and integrate and consolidate into kind of these really, really mature platforms, are those larger MSPs. I'm just kind of curious of how those numbers might play out, because there is a nice feeling when you can just kind of send an email or do a chat and get right to somebody who is a very, very strategic partner and is a core component of, your internal deliverables to your clients, and is so much a part of your business, to be able to just have that instead of having to get into a queue and wait days or weeks. And I'm not saying that that's, what happens with these larger organizations, but I know that is appealing to folks that need a lot more help in growing their businesses in the early stages.
So a few things on that. Because you were talking about smaller MSPs maybe finding appeal in the way that Ninja and Halo interact with their partners. So first of all, that kind of relationship, that sort of tie between Ninja and Halo on the one hand and MSPs on the other, this is anecdotal, but I think everybody would agree that's part of what has made these companies very popular right now. It's worth noting, I had a chance this week as we're recording this, a few weeks ago as folks are hearing it, to interview Robin Odie, the Canalys analyst who's responsible for this data. And he said, in terms of why Kaseya is now number one in market share instead of number two, a big part of that is Kaseya 365, which he said has been very appealing to smaller MSPs that tend to be a little bit more cost conscious early on in their life cycle. That said, you're kind of talking about how maybe that kind of relationship, the Ninja Halo relationship, is more appealing to smaller MSPs than larger ones. If we're talking about the largest MSPs, right, they get very close personal attention. And this was a point that Odie made as well. I mean, if you're a really big MSP and you work with Kaseya or ConnectWise and you pick up the phone with a problem, someone will answer that right away and help you deal with that right away. So I'm endorsing everything you just said, but kind of qualifying it a little bit. Smaller MSPs are seeing more appeal in Kaseya right now, apparently, due to Kaseya 365. But with that one little point aside, I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and the other thing I think that attracts the smaller MSPs, as I think about it more, is just that is the vision and the message that Kaseya is putting out there. And we've had Fred Vacola, CEO of Kaseya, on the show a couple of times, and he's he is dead set on helping these MSPs get paid what they're worth. I love that how he talks about all these other professional services that small and medium business owners pay, attorneys, accountants, and things like that, and the argument that MSPs should be paid at least as much, if not more, than those folks. So I think that is super appealing as well to MSPs.
Okay, well, let's move on to your tip of the week, Eric. And I always look for a good segue into that. And this is a stretch, but we're talking platforms now, and let's talk about something related to a social media platform.
Yeah, good, Rich. I like how you tied that in there. So I think from the perspective of an MSP, we look at what MSPs, have are candid about and say, look, we're really great at technology and solutions and customer service and all these things. And the couple of areas where we could use some help and are not so great at are sales and marketing. So my tip of the week for 2025, starting now, right, is for this week, as our listeners are hearing this, is to optimizing their LinkedIn strategy for sales prospecting in 2025. And what I think is appealing about this tip, Rich, is it's really a lot of behind the scenes stuff, right? It's, if I look at myself, I'm an introverted engineer, right? I adapt my behavior, my normal behavior, to do what I do and what I need to do and what I really enjoy doing. But I'm really much more comfortable behind the scenes, right? And believe it or not, and a lot of MSPs, MSP leadership are engineers, right? A smaller percentage of business owners that run MSPs are sales minded or people person, right? So I talk a lot about, behavioral profiling and things like that we do with our MSP partners. And, you've got the data driven, process driven folks that are more the engineer mindset like me. And then you have more the extroverts, right? The folks that are charismatic and, in the disc language, they've got a really high I, they're influential. They have a lot of friends and strangers or friends they just haven't met yet, right? So when we're talking about MSPs developing a process to generate leads when we're moving and maturing away from referral-based business growth, there are some things that we can leverage that exist today that I never had the opportunity to leverage in my MSP before we sold it in 2007. And that is social media. And I'm going to specifically talk about LinkedIn. So 3 tips to actually use LinkedIn to generate leads and to further your prospecting efforts before picking up the phone. Let's put it that way. Okay. So number 1, Rich, first order of business is think of LinkedIn, your company page and your personal page as your calling card. LinkedIn, I think, is the biggest platform now for professionals and business connections and things like that. So when you're marketing as an MSP, who is your target audience? What is it? What pains do you solve for them? And what's your value proposition? Take some time and optimize your LinkedIn profile so that it appeals to those prospects and those buyers. And take some time thinking about it. There's lots of great resources online, Rich, that folks can just search to get tips on optimizing their LinkedIn company profile and personal profiles. Myself, I only use LinkedIn for business purposes. I don't like putting out personal things like that on LinkedIn or Facebook or anything like that. I use it for business, and so my effort is really to represent what I think my prospective and our prospective clients, want to see to build some trust and credibility. Number 2, use LinkedIn Sales Navigator for precision targeting of prospects. So LinkedIn Sales Navigator, is a very mature platform that allows you to filter the data, demographic data and business data of everyone on LinkedIn. And if they're associated with an organization, Rich, you can search for that organization. You can identify the folks that are connected in that organization. You can search by title. You can search by their role. You can search by the company size in terms of staff, geography. There's probably 20 or 30 different filters that can be used to target very specifically the audience that you want to approach. And then once you do that, you can save these searches, Rich, and then you can create tip number 3, compelling connection requests. And you and I, Rich, probably have gotten every version of a bad kind of thanks for connecting with me and the 400-word single-spaced paragraph of the worst sales pitch on the planet. That is not how I recommend reaching out to prospects and potential clients. In fact, I'm going to, borrow a term from Andrew Smith, who's on our team at Channel Master, our digital marketing guru. And he introduced us to the concept of the 4-to-1 formula, if you'll recall, Rich. And this is where you give away 4 pieces of value, 4 assets or 4 messages of value without asking for anything in return before that's the 4. And then the 1 is when you ask them for, hey, can we get on a quick Zoom call and get to know each other or something like that. So when I'm working with MSPs, Rich, to build out this LinkedIn process, what we're looking for is not only identifying their target audience in LinkedIn, but there's an additional toggle in LinkedIn Sales Navigator. And I'm talking Sales Navigator. That is an additional monthly fee that you'll invest in, but you can get a 30-day trial to test it out. And I think it runs about $80 a month for Sales Navigator. But there's a toggle once you filter your search for your ideal audience that can identify the folks that have posted on LinkedIn within the last 30 days. And why would we do that? Because these are the folks that are typically the most active on LinkedIn. And then what we'll do, Rich, is we'll identify what they posted or reshared. It's also, did I reshare or repost something? Not that I created it myself. And what you'll do in this strategy, Rich, is you'll identify what they posted or shared, and then find other articles or other events or other items of interest that align with that article. And when you ask for a connection request, you can say, hey, thanks for sharing that article. Let's connect. Soon as they connect, thank you for connecting with me. Here's something that I think might be of interest to you. And so I use AI to identify articles that are similar to what folks are posting and, pick from those and then start making those connections. And so what we're doing, Rich, is we're building a little bit of a relationship. We're offering some value, putting some logs in the fireplace before we ask for heat, if you will. And that's how we build some of these connections in a more personable way, in a more helpful way, and distinguish ourselves from those folks that are just pitching every time you connect with them.
It's interesting, Eric. I know less about sales and marketing than most MSPs, I would say. And yet, even I am familiar with Sales Navigator, and it is surprising to me how often or how many people haven't heard of it. Let alone aren't using it, just aren't even really aware of the fact that it's out there and what it can do. And I mean, $80 a month or whatever it is, that add-on fee is extremely reasonable, especially if, like you and me both are, the idea of cold calling people makes you shudder, right? Like there's this tool that you can use online that initiates contact in a way that's maybe a little bit more palatable for introverts like you and I are. The other thing I'll point out, and this actually is a good segue to where we're going next on the show here, is just you started the whole thing out by pointing out that your starting point for this LinkedIn sales and marketing process is identifying who your customers are and what sets you apart from the competition. And in the work we do at Channel Mastered with our clients, these are the fabled ICP and UVP, ideal customer profile and unique value proposition. And it's who is it who ideally you're doing business with, and what is the value proposition you offer them that is unique, that is really truly uniquely yours. Not, we're very quick and responsive and we know technology really well. What is it that really sets you apart from the competition? You need to know that. And here's the segue, Eric. We're going to take a break in just a moment here, and when we come back, we're going to share New Year's resolutions. And this would be a great New Year's resolution for the MSPs in our audience. If you don't know your ICP and your UVP, figure it out. You really need to know that, so that you can target all of your sales and marketing activities, not just what you do on LinkedIn.
Yeah, Rich. And those are the two first steps in any marketing strategy, is understanding who your target audience is and what your unique value proposition is. So we're going to take a quick break. And then when we come back, Rich, I'm curious to compare notes on each of our New Year's resolutions. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back.
And welcome back to part 2 of this episode of the MSP Chat podcast, which, as we told you already, is the first one of 2025, even if it's officially late in 2024 as we're recording it. And in fact, we're recording it just days after we did the previous episode 55 of the show with Brad Gross, in which he shared some New Year's resolutions for the MSPs and our audience. And to kick off 2025, Eric, I figured let's do some New Year's resolutions of our own.
Sounds good, Rich. I'm ready. You go first.
Okay. Yeah. My crazy idea. I go first. And this one actually is inspired by an interview I did just yesterday, actually, with the great Matt Lee of Pax8. And I was interviewing him for an upcoming Channelholic post. Channelholic is my blog, for those who don't know. It's going to be about compliance. And I was kind of getting his perspective on compliance. And he made a really big point during the course of that conversation to emphasize that from a compliance standpoint, the biggest, most helpful first thing, basically, that most MSPs should do is get their own environment into compliance. It's one of these cobbler shoes, or I forget exactly how that goes, but MSPs have a tendency to be much more focused on keeping their clients secure and cleaning up their client environments than their own. And part of why I bring this up, Eric, is Mac told me this absolutely heartbreaking story. He had a conversation not long ago with an MSP who had a $2 million a year business that just disappeared practically overnight because of a breach of that MSP's infrastructure, and everything just kind of fell apart. And this can happen to anybody. So New Year's resolution for me, that I'm suggesting to the folks in the audience is really dedicate some serious time to getting, checking out the security posture, doing a vulnerability assessment, a security and risk assessment of your tools and technology, your platform, and lock that stuff down so that you're safe and you can keep your customers safe.
Great resolution, Rich. All right. And never more timely than right now, right? Okay, so here's one. So I'm an avid reader, Rich, and in the past I've gone through spurts of reading kind of, different themed books, and I got I got back into my sci-fi kind of focus earlier this year. I went and read all of the Expanse books. If no one has read the Expanse, amazing books, and a couple of other ones. So I was kind of on a little sci-fi kick this year, and I need to get back to self-improvement, Rich. I need to get back to it. So I've done a lot of, leadership training and leadership books and efficiency and improvement, but it's been a minute. So I want to hone or rehone my focus. So my New Year's resolution is to read 3 leadership books that I haven't read before, because I've got my favorites that I go back to all the time, but I want to expand my horizons. And then I want to pick up and read 3 kind of organizational and efficiency self-improvement books. And I want to push myself outside of my comfort zone intentionally and adopt some new things just to, for my own self-improvement and for our team, Rich, and for my family and the folks that, I love.
That is a great resolution. It's also great advice for the MSPs in our audience here. And I'll just briefly note, we're talking about reading books, but listening to a book, I listen to a lot of podcasts, but you can listen to books just the same way now when you're driving or doing the dishes or mowing the lawn, etc. That counts. So yeah, I like it, Eric. People need to do that. Okay, I'm going to go with number 2, my second resolution here. First one was inspired by an interview I did very recently. This one is inspired by an interview I did about 7 years ago that kind of came to mind recently. And this was with Austin McCord, who for a long time was the CEO of Datto, and Datto was an independent company. And I was interviewing him at a Datto conference at DattoCon 2017. And I should say, I have a fondness, Eric, or at least I'm willing to ask stupid questions sometimes in interviews, even though I know I'm going to get a response like, why are you asking me that stupid question? Because you learn things that way. And I don't care if I sound stupid. If I can go 10 minutes without sounding stupid, I've done really, really well. And so I asked Austin in this interview, do you have an IPO coming up? And in his own way, he let me know that was a pretty stupid question. But then I did learn something. He said, look, we run Datto as if we're going to be announcing an IPO next week. And we run it that way all the time. And it was a while, it was years before Datto actually went ahead and announced an IPO. And I think this kind of dovetails with, it ties to a theme that comes up. It's come up through the years a bunch of times in conversations and podcasts that we've done, Eric. You really, really don't want to learn that your business as an MSP is worth a lot less than you thought it was when you're actually ready to sell. It is never, never too early to kind of figure that out, and never too early to run the business as if you're going to sell it very, very soon. So the New Year's resolution for the folks in our audience, start figuring out what the business is worth now and start running it like a product that you're going to sell when and if the time comes for you to exit.
Yeah, it's great advice just any time, Rich. And yes, we have talked about that subject on the podcast in the past. And we've also talked about, some heartbreaking scenarios where, folks had something happen health-wise, family-wise, something that has forced them to exit the business. And let's just say that the business was not optimized to command the highest valuation, the highest offer. And some of those scenarios, were pretty heartbreaking. People had to just kind of leave, and leave so much potential value on the table because they weren't focused on growing. Hey, tomorrow's not promised, right? So, good resolution. My number 2 now, Rich, is getting back into my engineer mode. I'm going to focus dedicated time and energy every week to make sure that I am helping us improve our business platforms, processes, integrations, workflows, and reporting. It's time to level up that next for 2025. And there's a lot of opportunity with AI, with new integrations and things that I just have not been keeping up on. We've been just operating the way we've been operating and making tweaks the way we needed to make them along the way. But it's time for me to get back into a very structured, carving out time every single week to work on the business platforms and processes and things like that, along with, my responsibilities of working in the business.
I love it. And once again, it is your New Year's resolution, but a great New Year's resolution for our audience to adopt. And I'll just point out, you were talking about sales and marketing before. You were talking about platform optimization now, and dedicating time to both things. A great idea is to just literally budget time, put it on the calendar, make sure it happens every week, like you were saying, so that it isn't one of these New Year's resolutions that you bring up in January and forget about in February.
And you bring up a real key point that I want to touch on, Rich, is yes, block it out in your calendar, but then you've got to hold yourself accountable to making sure that you don't usurp that time, because I've done this in the past where I've gotten really far into it, and then all of a sudden, okay, well, I need to have that meeting, so I'll just do it during that time, right? We have to stay very disciplined about this, and that is time that I'm going to hold sacred and not book stuff around 99% if I can help it. And that's the challenge.
Very good, and very important. All right, so here's my third and final New Year's resolution for this episode of the show here, and this is inspired by something that I wrote yesterday for an edition, a post on Channelholic that will have been out a little bit by the time this episode airs. And I was just sharing some statistics, some numbers from ISACA, ISACA, an industry body that focuses on security. Dave Sobel, our mutual buddy Dave Sobel, the Business of Tech podcast, also had some numbers just within a few days of one another. And it was about, broadly speaking, the issue of gender and racial diversity in the IT industry. And let's just say it is still poor along both of those dimensions. There is precious little diversity by gender or race in the IT industry right now. And really, regardless of how you feel about that from a political point of view, a social, a moral, an ethical point of view, we know how huge the skills gap is in this industry right now, just generally, and especially in security. The planet Earth is literally millions of cybersecurity professionals short of what it needs to keep people safe right now. And so we really can't afford to discourage or lose anyone who might be part of this industry that we're a part of. And yet these numbers really don't budge over time. And so all I can tell you, Eric, and this, I'm trying to be as modest as possible about this, but I almost didn't write about any of this because I'm tired of pointing out everything I just said and then not helping in any way. And so my resolution basically is to block out some serious time, some writing time, some real estate in my blog to suggesting some practical things that the industry can do, that MSPs can do. So, some real ways forward for everybody to start putting a dent into those numbers for the betterment of everybody.
Wow. I love that resolution, Rich. That is awesome. What a go-giver. And, if you want to, you want things to change, you need to take an active, role in that. And so, yeah, commend you on that one. Wow. Mine are all very personal to me. You're giving back. I feel a little bit, like I should have, picked a couple of other ones that are more outward facing, but it's the year 2025 where I am focused on more of my own self-improvement. Now, these are just 3 for me. I have other ones for the business and other things like that. But my last one, Rich, is kind of a twofer. And it's maintaining a consistent workout schedule and making sure I'm taking a little bit more personal time just for my own physical and mental well-being, so I can be the best me I can be for the folks I love and for myself. So that's my final selfish New Year's resolution, right?
And it is not selfish, Eric. And the first 2 resolutions, they were personal and inspiration. But like I said, there is go-giver to that. You are sharing some really good ideas with folks in the audience that they should be doing. And I so endorse that last one because it's been kind of a big deal for me this year. I've been prioritizing. I worked out pretty much daily for a long time, but I've been prioritizing sleep. I've been prioritizing actually taking weekends off. And all these things that feel and maybe sound to entrepreneurs and to people who really take their work ethic seriously, self-indulgent. But really they're not. And in fact, I unfortunately, I can't remember which one it is, but one of the big venture capital firms has been publishing this big, long series of stories about taking better care of your health and so on, because, purely from an investment point of view, an investment from a venture capital firm, your investment in your own business, being smart about fitness, about what you eat, about how you rest, about taking time off. This is going to make you more productive, not just happier. And happier, if we ended there, great. But you're going to be happier, you're going to feel better, and you're going to be more productive and more successful. I really believe.
I do too. And, it's time for me to refocus on some of those things, and you feel better and more productive and, have more gas left in the tank when you're doing those kinds of things, when it counts.
Okay, well, folks, those are our New Year's resolutions for 2025. I hope you got some use out of them. We are now going to take a quick break. When we come back on the other side, we'll share a funny thought or two, wrap up the show. Stick around. We're going to be right back. And welcome back to part 3 of this episode of the MSP Chat Podcast. And, ordinarily, Eric, we would share some thoughts about the interview that we just did, but given that you and I were essentially interviewing each other, we probably don't have much further to talk about with respect to New Year's resolutions. So I think that leaves us with time for just one last thing. And this is just, as we're recording this is just in the past. December 14th, 2024 was the year that in New York, they did the annual Santa Claus pub crawl. And unfortunately, I don't know exactly how many Santas showed up this year to go bar to bar and do a lot of drinking, but it was December 14th. It tends to be a pretty big event, despite the fact this year the temperatures were apparently hovering around freezing. This is not just a phenomenon that is limited to New York. Winnipeg, Phoenix, London, San Francisco, there are Santa pub crawls all over the country, actually. And I guess these tend to be affiliated with Santa cons, Santa conferences. And I'll just point out this, folks in the audience can decide for themselves how Grinch-like this is or isn't. But New York City police, before the pub crawl, posted reminders on social media that open containers are prohibited in the streets and that blocking pedestrian and car traffic can lead to a summons, even for Santa.
Yeah. And it's thousands of Santas doing this. I mean, as I've been watching. And you know what? We always see it's a great celebration, but folks kind of take it too far sometimes. And, kind of reminds me of that movie with Billy Bob Thornton, Bad Santa. Did you ever watch that, Rich?
Yeah, absolutely.
So funny. Anyway, Rich, let's take everybody out. Well, we are the first, again, I need to be reminded that this is going out January 3rd. So, hey, everyone, welcome to 2025.
Happy New Year's, folks. Like Eric was saying, you're living in the future for us, basically, and we will catch up with you in 1 week's time with the second episode of the new year. Until then, I will just remind you that this is both a video and an audio podcast, which means if you're listening to the audio edition but would be curious to check us out on video, go to YouTube, look up MSP Chat. You'll find us there. If you're watching us on YouTube, but you would be interested in listening to us because you're into audio podcasts, go to wherever it is you get your audio podcast. Google, Apple, Spotify, you name it, you're almost certainly going to find us there. And however you find us, please subscribe, rate, review. It's going to help other people find and enjoy the show just like you do. This show is produced by the great Russ Johns. It is edited by the great Riley Simpson. They are part of the team with us here at Channel Mastered. They would be delighted to create a podcast for you and your business. And podcasts are the tiniest little piece of what we do for our clients at Channel Mastered. To learn more about everything that we do and all the value we add, go to www.channelmastered.com. Channel Mastered has a sister organization called MSP Mastered. That is Eric working directly in one-to-one with MSPs to help them grow and optimize their business. You can learn more about that at www.mspmaster.com. So once again, folks, Happy New Year. Thanks for joining us on the show. We'll see you again in a week's time. Until then, please remember, you cannot spell channel without MS.